In today's world, we need a robust method of establishing identity. Without it, anyone could walk into your bank and empty your savings account. Therefore, intrinsically linked to identity is the concept of authentication. Let's first understand what is meant by authentication, and then we'll review what we mean by identity and the various models that are available to us. Imagine that you're using an ATM to withdraw money from your account. You need to authenticate to the bank by using a PIN along with your banker's card to establish your identity. This is just like an IT system which uses authentication to establish an identity before allowing a user to gain access to corporate resources. The most common form of authentication is the username and password combination. You often use these when logging into a computer or website. Best practice requires the password to be complex so that it cannot easily be guessed. However, we've seen that the password is too difficult to remember or change too often. Then users may write down the password, which will make it vulnerable. If you're moving from an on-premises IT system to a cloud-based system, your identity model will also need to change. For example, you'll need to move from on-premises authentication, which uses Active Directory, to a cloud-based identity model using Azure Active Directory. Different companies will have different identity requirements and needs. For example, a new startup company will not have an existing on-premises identity model, and so they can adopt a cloud-based identity model straight away. Whilst an established organization may have hundreds of on-premises servers managing Active Directory for thousands of users, which will be more complex to move to the cloud. If you only use cloud-based solutions such as Microsoft 365 or Office 365, you only need cloud sign-in services. But if you have an existing on-premises set, you might use a hybrid model with a mix of on-premises and cloud-based services. For example, enterprises using on-premises Active Directory may need to use Azure AD Connect to sync user details with Azure Active Directory. Let's review the types of online cloud identities used by Microsoft. We'll use Office 365, the cloud-based software as a service suite of apps and services from Microsoft, as an example in this section. Office 365 supports 3 signing identity models. These are cloud-only identity, synchronized or hybrid identity, and federated authentication. Let's find out more about these 3 identity models. With a typical Office 365 tenant, you'll use cloud-only identity. This is a default model and is also known as an online or account identity. Office 365 users, Azure Active Directory or Azure AD for account identity, and accounts are created using the online portal, such as within the Office 365 Admin Center or the Azure Active Directory portal, or by using Windows PowerShell with an Office 365 tenant. Your IT administration is simple and you don't need any extra directory tools or servers. A synchronized or hybrid identity is where accounts are created using on-premises directories such as Active Directory, domain services known as Active Directory, and then accounts and passwords are kept in sync between the on-premises directory and the cloud. Your on-premises Active Directory is the authoritative source for information relating to accounts, and any changes need to be synchronized to Azure Active Directory. In this model, the cloud identity such as the user account in Office 365 verifies access requests based on the synchronized information. The greatest benefit to users is that they can use the same credentials when accessing on-premises or cloud-based resources. The final type of cloud identity is called federated authentication, which is similar to synchronized identity but for more complex scenarios such as smart card-based authentication or third-party multi-factor authentication. User accounts are based on an on-premise directory such as Active Directory, and these are in sync with the cloud, but with the ultimate verification is retained with the on-premise identity provider. Federated authentication is a lot more complex to set up and maintain. There are several sign-in features that are not natively supported by Azure AD. These include sign-in using smart cards or certificates, sign-in using an on-premises multi-factor authentication server, sign-in using third-party authentication solutions, and multi-site on-premise authentication solutions. Let's take a look at how the Azure Active Directory identity model provides us with a light version of Active Directory delivered from the cloud. Azure AD may sound complex, but it isn't really. It's the default identity model for all Microsoft cloud services, such as Office 365 or Dynamics 365. So, you may have already used it if you have any of these products. Imagine a database of just a few user attributes such as name, tenant, role, and password, all stored in the cloud using the highly available Azure Cloud Services that can scale to millions of records. There were no costs for using the free version of Azure Active Directory, such as the version bundled with all Office 365 subscriptions. However, most businesses will choose one of the additional paid premium subscription levels when using Azure Active Directory. The basic and premium tiers provide value-added features such as company branding and user self-service password reset. To understand the Azure AD lifecycle, let's run through a typical scenario. A new user is created and then managed in Office 365, and whenever the user needs to be verified, the user account information is stored in Azure AD, and whenever the user needs to be verified or identity, and access management is performed by Azure AD. This cloud-based identity as a service is maintained by Microsoft so that it's always available for your users. Azure AD allows you to move your user authentication services to the cloud. Here the data is safe and is always available and stored within the data center. If you need to retain local ownership, you can use Federation services using the Azure AD Connect tool to provide on-premises identity, whilst at the same time allowing you to extend your Active Directory environment to the cloud. We know that the cloud offers scalability and always-on availability. Because Azure AD is hosted in the cloud, it can be depended upon and accessed anywhere. Azure AD works with other cloud services via web-based protocols and application programming interfaces or APIs, which allow trusted communications with Azure AD. With these secure APIs, Azure AD can integrate with other services such as on-premises AD and allow you to have the ability to have a single sign-on, or so between separate services such as your essential corporate apps. It's worth noting that Azure AD does not use the on-premises Kerberos protocol. Instead, it uses modern web protocols such as OAuth 2.0, Security AML 2.0, OpenID Connect, and Web Services Federation or WS Federation. Because these are industry-standard protocols, they're widely used and adopted on the web. The Azure AD Connect tool, which replaces DirSync, is the primary synchronization tool and allows on-premise Active Directory accounts to be synced with Azure AD. You can download the Azure AD Connect tool to install it onto one of your on-premises servers from the link on screen. You can also manage your Active Directory objects from the command line. Azure AD supports using the AD Graph API, which has been renamed as the Microsoft Graph API. Microsoft Graph is a REST API and supports XML or JavaScript object notation or JSON, and connect to all Microsoft cloud-based assets. You can also use Azure AD PowerShell and Azure CLI, which allows you to use commandlets, such as Get Azure AD User and New Azure AD User. The Azure CLI is an open-source command line tool that you can use to manage Azure resources from any platform, Windows, Linux, or Mac.